Mr. President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is fortunate that we can meet at the UN conference dealing with such an important issue as aid to the least developed countries. I appear before you as a president of the country on whose borders a brutal neocolonial war is now taking place. Yes, the Russian aggression against Ukraine is a neocolonial war. The empire has invited a neighboring country to seize its lands and its hidden wealth and profit from it. But the empire is also kidnapping people, including children, and sending them deep into Russia. Ukrainian estimates that more than 100,000 children have been abducted by the Russians. And those who refuse to submit to its will, the empire kills. Does this not sound familiar to you, ladies and gentlemen? Has this not been the history of many of your countries? I'm open about it because Poland itself was a victim of brutal policies pursued by neighboring empires. Today, we are counted among the developed countries. But due to our dramatic past experiences, I feel obliged to speak out loud about the need for solidarity between the developed North and the global South. This is likewise an obligation to oppose scenarios where one strong state seeks to dominate other countries by imposing its will on them or by restoring to an overt assault. Poland advocates cooperation of equal sovereign states, advocates multilateralism. For history is teaching us that only equality of all states before international law and absolute adherence thereto are best safeguards of peace, security, and economic development. Obviously, it is not easy to achieve, but there is no third way. Poland's stance has been and continues to reaffirm the primacy of international law in relations among states. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm fully aware of the challenges arising in other parts of the world. Moreover, I'm also conscious of the expectations that the countries of the global South have vis-à-vis the rich North, which I feel I am representing. I realize that the scale of the challenges is enormous. It's not only the Russian war in Ukraine, but also the protracted instability in Yemen, Syria, or Afghanistan. It is also the growing number of refugees and internally displaced persons. We are talking about over 100 million people, most of them women and children. It's also natural disasters such as severe droughts and floods in Pakistan and South Sudan and earthquakes in Syria and Turkey. Finally, it's rising energy and food prices, which combined with the still felt economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, mean that the number of people suffering from malnutrition exceeded a staggering figure of 800 million in 2021, whereas the number of people experiencing acute hunger has almost tripled in the last 3 years to reach in excess of 300 million. These are alarming figures. Ladies and gentlemen, I understand that the least developed countries may fear that a war on the borders of the European Union would further reduce the already insufficient resources available to them. I understand this anxiety because it would be awfully bad news, especially when the European Union is the world's biggest donor of development aid. In 2021 alone, the European community earmarked to this end the amount of 70 billion euro, which represents almost 50% of all global development aid. As President of the EU's 6 largest member states, I will strive to make sure that the challenges faced by the least developed countries remain high on the EU list of priorities. That's why I support the EU decision to allocate more than 2 billion euro to help developing countries, mainly in Africa, fight hunger. In addition, we as Poland are making efforts to rebuild the supply chains of Ukrainian grain in order to alleviate the food crisis, which has mainly affected the least developed countries. In stark opposition to the Russian narrative, it's precisely President Putin's decision to launch an aggression on Ukraine that comes as a heavy blow to global economy. It impedes global GDP growth and pushes up prices of many goods. Unfortunately, economic impact of the war are felt more and more distinctly, not only in Europe, but on other continents, including Africa, Asia, and the Middle East, and least developed countries in particular. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in view of the current particularly difficult situation for the least developed countries, Poland is convinced of the need to make further efforts to increase the resilience of their economies and to support the development of their internal markets. This is why we led to our support to the Doha Programme of Action for the least developed countries for the decade 2021-2031. I do hope that this will contribute to visible reduction of disparities, to the harnessing of the potential represented by women and girls on the way to economic and social development of the respective countries, and also to the engagement of local communities for lasting peace and sustainable growth. We also realize the growing need for long-term support to reduce the vulnerability of developing countries to external crises, food, energy, and climate. On the last point here, noteworthy is the idea of just transition, where economic changes needed to protect the climate should take human dimension into account. In addition, for many years we have been implementing assistance projects in the areas of education, access to healthcare, and support for entrepreneurship. So I would like to underscore that we are open to cooperation and are happy to share our solution and experiences. To this end, we are developing the network of our diplomatic missions, among others, in Africa. We are determined to develop political contacts as well as economic and scientific ones. We do believe that through broad cooperation, exchange of knowledge and experiences, we can effectively assist the least developed countries. Moreover, Polish companies have an offer tried and tested price competitive farming equipment as well as ICT solutions sustainable to be used in financial and insurance sectors. Ladies and gentlemen, I do hope that the debate at this year's conference will be another symbol of international solidarity and will allow concrete plans and decisions to be drawn up to strengthen world trade and, above all, to improve the situation in the countries that need it most. Thank you very much for your attention and the opportunity to speak at this important forum.